Welcome to Real Estate School. I think you're going to find today's video very helpful for your real estate licensing exam. Today we're going to be discussing listing types and the listing agreement itself. The employment contract between a broker and a real estate seller is commonly called the listing agreement, or sometimes referred to as the listing contract. It defines the relationship between the seller and the broker, or real estate firm. The listing agreement is a contract for the professional services of the real estate broker, by which the broker is authorized to represent the principal to consumers. The authorization includes obtaining and submitting offers for the property. The Real Estate Sales Associates authority to provide brokerage services originates with the broker. Sellers tend to think that they are hiring the sales agent to sell their home, and for practical purposes they basically are. It is the listing agent that sits down at the kitchen table with the seller and signs the listing agreement. But they are hiring the broker, and the sales associate works on behalf of the broker. When the home sells, the commission is paid to the broker. The broker will share commission with the agent based on their agreement. Even though the real estate sales associate may perform most, if not all, of the listing services, the listing remains with the broker, who is responsible for the conduct of the agent. Another misconception is that there are two commissions involved in the listing, one to the broker of the seller and one to the broker of the buyer. But in actuality, there is only one commission. The seller hires the broker to find a buyer, and that's it. The broker of the seller's agent gets the commission and then shares that one commission with the broker of the buyer for help in finding the buyer. The way that the one commission is divided must be disclosed to the seller. The brokers will then share that commission with the agents that facilitated the transaction on their behalf. The listing agreement will establish the listing price for the home, the desired price the seller wants, and it will also define what the commission rate is going to be. The commission rate the seller is going to pay the broker for their services. It will also define the roles and responsibilities of the real estate broker and of the real estate agents who work under the listing broker. The listing contract must have a couple other things. It must have a specific starting date and specific ending date or expiration date. Specific. It must also have the signature of all of the sellers. It must also state a legal description for the property. The listing contract will contain many other items, but these items are required for it to be legally enforceable. Types of listing agreements. The type of listing agreement used by broker and client determines the rights and obligations of the parties. A listing agreement can be exclusive to one broker or made available to multiple brokers. So two important terms that we want you to know from this video. Know the terms and know the difference in the meaning of these two terms: exclusive right to sell listing and exclusive agency listing. Notice both listings begin with the word exclusive. In both cases, one broker is employed as the seller's sole representative. With an exclusive right to sell listing agreement, the listing broker is given the exclusive right or authorization to market the seller's property. If the property is sold while the listing agreement is in effect, the seller must pay the broker a commission regardless of who sells the property. In other words, if the seller finds a buyer with or without the broker's assistance, the seller must pay the broker a commission. In an exclusive right to sell listing, the agent does not need to show that they are the procuring cause of the buyer. Just as with an exclusive right to sell listing, with an exclusive agency listing, one broker is authorized to act as the exclusive agent of the principal, but with one huge difference. The seller retains the right to sell the property without the obligation to pay the broker. For the broker, this type of listing is very risky and somewhat odd, because the broker is placed in a position of making an effort to market the property only to be in competition with the client to find a buyer. Unlike the exclusive right to sell listing, the agent would have to prove that they were the procuring cause of the buyer. Another type of listing to be familiar with is an open listing, also known in some areas as a non-exclusive listing, or we also call it a one-time showing agreement. With an open listing, the seller retains the right to employ any number of brokers as agents. The listing brokers market the property simultaneously, and the seller is obligated to pay a commission only to the listing broker who produces a buyer. Whichever party is the procuring cause of the buyer, that party is due the commission. Like an exclusive agency listing, with an open listing, if the seller personally sells the property without the aid of any of the listing brokers, the seller is not obligated to pay a commission to any of them. The terms of an open listing must be negotiated and should be in writing to protect the successful listing broker's ability to collect an agreed-upon fee from the seller. And finally, a net listing. A net listing provision specifies that the seller will receive a net amount of money from any sale, with the excess going to the listing broker as a commission. The broker is free to offer the property at any price greater than the net amount. Because a net listing can create a conflict of interest between the broker and the client, in many states, net listings are illegal and they are discouraged in other states. Let's finish up today with a little practice quiz on the material that we covered. Question number 1. The type of listing that assures a broker of compensation for procuring a customer regardless of the procuring cause is A, exclusive right to sell agreement, B, exclusive agency agreement, C, open listing, or D, net listing. And the answer is A, exclusive right to sell agreement. Question number 2. An owner agrees to pay a broker for procuring a tenant unless it is the owner who finds the tenant. This is an example of A, exclusive right to sell agreement, B, exclusive agency agreement, C, open listing, or D, net listing. And the answer is exclusive agency agreement. Question number 3. A landlord promises to compensate a broker for procuring a tenant, provided the broker is the procuring cause. This is an example of A, exclusive right to sell agreement, B, exclusive agency agreement, C, open listing, or D, net listing. In this case, the answer is C, open listing. Question number 4. A listing agreement is technically an employment agreement between the seller and A, the broker, B, the multiple listing service, C, the sales associate, or D, the sales associate and broker together. And the answer is A, the broker. Only a licensed broker may enter into brokerage agreements. The broker sales associate has authority only to assist in negotiating the agreements. The sales associate is the agent of the broker, but only the broker is the agent of the client and a party to the representation agreement. Question number 5. Which of the following is a similarity between an exclusive agency listing and an exclusive right to sell listing? A. Under each, the seller retains the right to sell the real estate without the broker's help and without paying the broker a commission. B. Under each, the seller authorizes only one particular sales associate to show the property. C. Both types of listings give the responsibility of representing the seller to one broker only. Or D. Both types of listings are open listings. Our answer is C. Both types of listings give the responsibility of representing the seller to one broker only. That's the exclusive part. Each listing is exclusive, meaning it is granted to one broker exclusively. Our next question. A seller listed a property with a broker under an exclusive agency listing agreement. If the seller finds a buyer, the seller will owe the broker A. No commission, B. The full commission, C. A partial commission, or D. Only reimbursement for the broker's cost. And the answer is no commission. Exclusive agency listings allow the seller to find a buyer on their own and not pay a commission. Exclusive agency, no commissions. Next question. Which of the following is a similarity between an open listing and an exclusive agency listing? A. Under each, the seller avoids paying the broker commission if the seller sells the property to someone the broker did not procure. B. Each grants a commission to any broker who procures a buyer for the seller's property. C. Under each, the broker earns a commission regardless of who sells the property, as long as it is sold within the listing period. And D. Each grants the exclusive right to sell to whatever broker produces a buyer for the seller's property. And our answer is A. Under each, the seller avoids paying the broker a commission if the seller sells the property to someone the broker did not procure. In both cases, the seller finds a buyer on their own. They don't have to pay a commission. Our next question. Which statement is true of a listing agreement? A. It is an employment contract for the professional services of the broker. B. It obligates the seller to transfer the property if the broker produces a ready, willing, and able buyer. C. It obligates the broker to work diligently for both the seller and the buyer. D. It automatically binds the owner, the broker, and the MLS to its agreed provisions. The answer is true of a listing agreement. It is an employment contract for the professional services of the broker. Our next question. Which type of listing is prohibited in some states? A. Exclusive right to sell agreement. B. Exclusive agency agreement. C. Open listings. Or D. Net listings. And our answer is D. Net listings. Our final question. Most states require that a real estate listing agreement contain A. A multiple listing service clause. B. A definite contract termination date. C. An automatic extension clause. Or D. A broker protection clause. And the answer is B. A definite contract termination date. Brokerage agreements have to be specifically dated, much like a lease, with a definite start date and a definite termination date. That way, the client has a way out if they're not happy with your services. We hope you've enjoyed today's video on listing types and listing agreements. If you have, subscribe below and ring that bell That way we can notify you when we release our next video. Thank you.